Hello, everybody. Welcome. I want to thank everyone for coming to this workshop today. While we are experiencing collective grief, loss, and heaviness from the injustice that Breonna Taylor and her family are experiencing, to the climate and COVID-19 crises that we are being subjected to because of government and corporate inaction. And I know it's a really difficult and heavy time. So I'm really grateful that we're able to be together today to break down some of the collective isolation that we're feeling. And also I'm super grateful that y'all rolled out of bed on a Saturday to hang out with us today. So we're participating in a workshop on abolition and decarceration with Asian Prisoner Support Committee and Survived and Punished. This workshop is part of the Love Letters to Movement Leaders series, which was launched by 18 Million Rising in August. 18 Million Rising brings Asian American communities together online and off to reimagine Asian American identity with nuance, specificity, and power. We are using this Asian American identity as the foundation to build a more just and creative world where our experiences are affirmed, our leadership is valued, and all of us have the opportunity to thrive. I'm appreciative of the H&MR team for supporting this workshop today, including Shumi Detta, Bianca Nozaki Nasser, Turner Willman, and Charlene Koo. Shumi, as our H&MR tech backend, will be dropping links to resources for us, so make sure you keep your eye out for links from H&MR in the chat. We are also grateful to all of our co-sponsors, Equality Labs, Can't Stop, Won't Stop Consulting, Asian American Feminist Collective, Asian American Organizing Project, University of Connecticut's Asian and Asian American Studies Institute, Believers Bailout, Asian Law Caucus, and the People's Collective for Justice and Liberation. So while we are on Crowdcast today, many of us are joining from different places, and we want to remind ourselves that we do gather on the unceded land of Indigenous peoples. For those in Washington, D.C., where I am located, this is the land of the Piscataway and Anacostan people. So please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name, pronoun, and whose land you're occupying. We would love to hear from y'all and know who you are and where you're from. We're going to drop some links that will allow you to look up if you don't already know whose land you're occupying. We also want to thank our ASL interpreters, Nora Rodriguez and Trisha Vasquez. If you are deaf and hard of hearing using ASL interpretation today, you can text the interpreters, Nora and Trisha, with any feedback or vocabulary preferences if needed. Shumi will drop that information in the chat. If you need live captioning, we're using Stream Text, supported by Caption Access, and you can find it here. We thank Sherry Cookman for captioning for us today. Shumi will drop that link in the chat. And we will continue to drop links regarding accessibility throughout the workshop. I'm going to take just a little bit of time to read our community norms, which 18 Million Rising uses during all of our events. So we use our shared online and offline spaces to build connection, community, and collaboration in service of movements for collective liberation. We are all here to learn. No one knows everything, but together we know a lot. We do not welcome speech that is likely to harm other community members, regardless of intent. We do not tolerate harassment and other harmful behavior. We seek positive, enthusiastic consent at multiple levels. Move up, move back, be aware of what and who you bring into the room. So today we're joined by Nate Tien, co-director of Asian Prisoner Support Committee, and Emily Suh of Survived and Punished. Our event today will feature about 45 minutes of conversation with our speakers, a writing activity, and a brief Q&A at the end. You're welcome to use the Q&A feature or chat on Crowdcast to ask questions throughout, and we will incorporate them at the end of the event. So without further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Nate is a co-director at Asian Prisoner Support Committee. He has led and supported anti-deportation campaigns for dozens of Asian Americans facing deportation. He has participated in the Free Knee, Keep PJ Home, Pardon Refugees, ICE Out of California Prisons, and now the Right to Reunite campaign. During his time as an organizer with Asian Prisoner Support Committee, he has seen the release of upwards of 100+ people out of prison and ICE. He writes to people behind bars all across the nation, and in his free time, he enjoys karaokeing to 90s boy band songs. You can ask about that in the chat. Emily is an organizer with Survived and Punished California, working at the intersection of gender-based violence and criminalization. They are also the administrative assistant for Survived and Punished National, and they are currently based in Oakland, California. Today, your donations will go towards the abolitionist organizing of Survived and Punished, Asian Prisoner Support Committee, and H&MR. Funds also pay ASL interpreters and live captioning. Okay. We're going to hear shortly from Nate and Emily, who are both working towards abolition through building relationships and material work. But before we start with questions, I wanted to share some framing around the themes we'll be discussing today. One of them is, why do we need abolition? We first need to understand the system that we're operating from, which is the prison industrial complex. So according to Critical Resistance, the prison industrial complex is a term used to describe the overlapping interests of government and industry that uses surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic and social and political problems. The prison industrial complex helps and maintains the authority of people who get their power through racial, economic, and other privileges. They collect and maintain this power by perpetuating stereotypes of people of color, poor people, queer people, immigrants, youth, and other oppressed communities as criminal, delinquent, or deviant. And this power is also maintained by eliminating social and political dissent by oppressed communities that make demands for self-determination and reorganization of power in the US. Sounds familiar? Maybe it represents what we're experiencing right now. Our workshop partner, Survived and Punished, shares in their toolkit called Prison Abolition as Framework and Practice that abolition moves us toward a world where we build alternatives that exist outside of retributive structures that see caging and isolating people as justice. An abolitionist framework recognizes that criminalization and incarceration as strategies for addressing violence usually brings more targeted policing upon Black and immigrant communities without providing meaningful safety for survivors of violence. In Survived and Punished's organizing mission, they say, as abolitionists, we believe that prisons, detention centers, all forms of law enforcement and punitive prosecution are rooted in systems of violence, including racial, anti-trans, anti-queer, anti-immigrant, anti-youth, anti-poor, sexual, and gender violence. Cages are torture. Incarcerated people are by definition survivors of violence, and they deserve our urgent solidarity. Nate and Emily, we are so grateful for all the work that y'all are doing with APSC and Survived and Punished to support and free incarcerated folks. And we don't often get to hear directly from those people who are doing this organizing on the ground. So can you just tell us about what your organization does? And Nate, why don't you go first?
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for the introduction. What does APSC do? I mean, I think, to be frank, APSC works with bad immigrants and refugees. And I say that because I think it's a really important framing, right? I think when you think about immigrant rights movements, you tend to think about DACA, Dreamers, undocumented, people who are deserving to be in the, or I should say deserving to be in the United States. For APSC, we work with people who are immigrants and refugees who are in prison for serious convictions. And those people in the prison, we believe, have been at the receiving end of systemic violence for a long time, and for some of them, all their lives, right? We believe that if we lived in a world with no war, no poverty, no racism, no misogyny, that these prisons would cease to exist, ICE would cease to exist. So our mission is really to get folks free, get them reentry services, and to provide in any way we can kind of a healing platform for them. So we have an ethnic studies, Asian American studies class in San Quentin State Prison. We have a reentry program, and I think what we're most known for is our freedom campaigns, where we fight tooth and nail to get people free from prison, to get people free from ICE, and to bring people back who have been deported. Because I think we believe, I don't think it's any question that all families should be together, right? And there are alternatives to the carceral system, and there's alternatives to punitive punishment that support us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Suh. I am representing Survived and Punished here today. Thank you, Laura, for the introduction and for bringing all of us together to talk about abolition a bit and to get letters for some folks inside. So I think it's just a really beautiful event, and thank you for putting this together. 18 Million Rising, and also all the surrounding support outside of 18 Million Rising that made this possible. And thank you, Nate, for that introduction to APSC. We're really big fans, as you know, of your work, and Survived and Punished actually works with APSC in several different kind of respects. We have overlapping members. So we do work together sometimes quite a bit, but this is my first time meeting you, Nate. So, for this event. So thank you. To talk a bit more about Survive and Punish specifically, I think that what we're also most well known for are survivor defense campaigns. And these are campaigns to get criminalized survivors, and criminalization can look like prosecution, incarceration, threat of deportation. So there's various types that these survivors are facing, and the goals of these defense campaigns is to get these survivors out of that system and to get them released from prisons and cages. So our primary work is doing that survivor defense campaign work. We also use a variety of strategies such as mutual aid, so getting folks inside, survivors inside that we work with, money on their commissary every month. We also do a bit of legislative advocacy sometimes, direct actions. Most recently, we did one in front of Governor Newsom's house. It's actually more of a mansion than a home, but we did a direct action to call for the mass release of all incarcerated people during COVID. So these are like different kinds of strategies that we'll use, but ultimately our work is focused on how the pervasiveness of gender violence intersects with our pervasive systems of punishment. So that's a bit that I'll say about S&P. Thank you for making this space.
Thanks, y'all, for joining us. Okay, I'm going to ask another question. So at H&MR, we believe that we bring our whole selves to our organizing. And it's important that we name our identities and know our history because it holds us accountable to our communities and honors the work others have done before us and with us. So for both of y'all, as Asian American organizers, what lineages and movements do you see your work being a part of? And what was your entry point in this organizing? And Emily, you should go first this time.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm actually an immigrant. I came to the US shortly before 9/11 from South Korea. And so I grew up really witnessing firsthand the impact that 9/11 had, and just the amount of like racism and Islamophobia and also just the never-ending wars that really came out of that era. I would say that was like the kind of historical event that was really most critical to me sort of understanding, I'm a racialized subject, and I am part of an empire that is a racialized empire. So I think that, when we talk about Asian American movements, sometimes we can kind of fall into just celebrating our cultural heritage for culture's sake. And I would argue that the real potential of that movement is to really understand that we are part of a US settler state, and it's a global empire, and that, we have actually like huge stakes in this too. And thinking about racialized immigration from Asia to the US, it really obliges us to think really deeply about dismantling US empire. And that's kind of the ultimate goal. I'm seeing a little, oh, sorry, I think my connection might be fuzzy. But yeah, so that's a little bit about just my entry point into why I'm doing this work. And I see it from a stance of fighting against state violence and against the US settler colonialist state. And breaking down prisons has to be a part of that work. So yeah, that's my answer. Thank you.
For me, well, APSC was founded by Yuri Kochiyama. I don't know how many people know that, but Yuri Kochiyama is one of the founding members, and APSC was built on this legacy of freedom fighters, right? APSC was really founded on this by these three men, Eddie Zhang, Rico, and Viet Nho, who really wanted an ethnic studies, Asian American studies class in San Quentin, and did solitary confinement for demanding those classes. And it wasn't until 2013, 2014 that ethnic studies, Asian American studies became a class in San Quentin. So, I'm here off the legacies of freedom fighters from generations before me. How I came into this work was I am a child of Cambodian refugees. And being a child of Cambodian refugees, I think, comes with a very unique experience, right? Grow up poor, eat KFC with rice, hot chips for breakfast before school. And I think when you grow up like that under very certain conditions, you want to find people in your life you don't have to explain yourself to, right? And when I went to college, at every stage, at every college I went to, I was like, oh, where are my Cambodians at? I went to community college, I went to UC, I went to graduate school, and every college I was like, where are my Cambodians at? And then, I probably met like 5 throughout my whole college life. And I had the opportunity to volunteer with APSC in my younger years to go into San Quentin. And on that first day, I met more Cambodians on that first day in prison than in my entire college life. right? And I think that says something. And I don't think it's a reflection or like a reflection of the character of my community. I think it is a system built to incarcerate them and people in similar conditions. And how I started organizing with them was I became their friends. They became my friends. And, I had this really traumatic event where I had to say goodbye to one of my first friends in San Quentin behind plexiglass and ice. It was really hard for me. And I remember 2 hours later, I bought a plane ticket to the Philippines to make sure I can see him when he got there. And then when I came back, I had more friends get transferred over to ICE. And I said, I don't want to lose any more of my friends. So tapped on a lot of people, and I said, I want to get these people free. I don't care that they have a murder conviction. I don't care. Like, you're either with it or you're not. And I took 2 months off work to travel to every University of California and almost every CSU to talk about PJ's freedom campaign. And, people were sympathetic, and it kind of snowballed me into this work.
Thanks for sharing, y'all. I think it's really important to hear what our entry points are into organizing. And it sounds like, unfortunately, like a lot of us come to this work because of state violence and because we see our communities being impacted or ripped apart by punitive systems or systems that were not built or ever meant to protect us and our loved ones. So I really appreciate y'all and the work that you do. And it's really tough. It's really tough work. I want to talk about letter writing because that's one of the reasons why we're having this workshop today, because we're talking about how letter writing kind of breaks down that isolation. And we know that letter writing is transformative. So on a personal level, I know I feel super connected when I write or receive a letter in the mail. Personal plug, buy stamps and support the USPS. And on a local and national level, I'm the campaign manager at 18MR, and I've organized letter writing campaigns with our members. And we've done campaigns like demanding Philly city council members stop luxury developers from developing or gentrifying South Philly neighborhoods. And we've also done letter writing campaigns about getting certain legislation to be passed or to protect the ACA, things like that. I'm curious about how the two of you use letter writing in your organizing. And I would like to know what is significant about letter writing in the fight for abolition. And Nate, why don't you go first this time?
Yeah, letter writing is so important. Movement work is all about relationships. And to do this work with people in prison, with people in ICE, with people in jails, one of the best ways to build relationships with them is through letters. And, I think it's understated how valuable and how powerful relationships are in this work, right? When you build a connection with someone, when you know them inside out, when you know their families, when you know their life, right? These letters are almost kind of a dedication to each other, right? That I want to see you through this. I want to see you free. And letters for people inside, or at least when I'm writing letters to people inside, I like to think of all my letters as love letters. Maybe I'm a hopeless romantic. I mean, not romantic, but hope. I think love is a powerful tool to drive us to do the things we want to do, right? I think people can make an easy entry point into this work out of rage. Like, I hate the prison industrial complex. I hate the police. I hate ICE, right? I think that's a fair entry point. Hate is strong. But the thing that's going to sustain you in this work is your love for each other, right? And it is my love for the people inside that I build with, that I get to know, that they send me pictures of, right? That really keeps me committed to them in this work, right? And it's almost like when someone writes a letter to you and when you write a letter to them, it's a gift to the it's a gift that I almost want to share with everyone, right? Like I remember my first letter, I used to write Move Mia Jamal. And when I got a letter back, you know, Mumia is really famous. When I got a letter back, I was like showing it to all my friends. I was like, hey, look I got this letter. I got this letter from this like hero. And then other people wanted to write people inside, right? And that's how movement grows, right? Your excitement for each other, to be friends with each other, to see each other through. And that's how I feel the importance is.
Yeah, that was beautiful, Nate. And I might be one of those people who work from hate and am learning to incorporate more love into my motivation for acting. So in terms of letter writing, incarcerated people in particular, I think that it's really hard to, I might say it's impossible to call yourself a prison abolitionist if you are not writing folks inside. It's probably the first thing that everyone should start with, to be honest, is writing folks incarcerated who are inside. And I think that letter writing is so significant because it creates opportunity for mutuality between you and the person on the opposite side of the cage. And it, you know, because there's a huge difference between not being incarcerated and being incarcerated. There's a power differential that exists between those two people. But through letter writing, you can kind of really dissolve a lot of those differences and kind of learn to connect with each other on a more fundamental basis aside from those differences. And, you know, once you start writing people inside, I think that you will have more of an investment in dismantling prisons. You know, once you get to know people, it just, you're in it, you know, and you need to get those folks out. So I think it creates opportunity for commitment as well. And, you know, that might sound scary, like dipping into something that's really big and hard. But my advice would be to start slow, to write folks inside, get to know each other, ask questions, talk about your childhood. That's what I do with Kanoa. And yeah, just start to build some trust and get to know the other person. And, you know, also another thing is you don't actually have to organize if you don't, I mean, if that's not something that doesn't call to you, then just providing emotional support and being a pen pal to incarcerated people is actually a huge, huge act of love, really, to go back to what Nate had said. And it's really, really valuable. We have survivors tell us all the time, incarcerated survivors tell us all the time that letter writing and receiving those letters can be so transformative. And, you know, you hear about things like there's an incarcerated survivor who had a court hearing and the lawyer just decided to show the judge this like huge stack of mail that the survivor received from folks outside while she was incarcerated. And this actually made an impact on the judge. And it shows that you have support from folks outside. It shows the prison guards and other, you know, state agents that you are a person who's cared for. And so it is a very, it's a really critical and valuable thing to be able to offer up. It's also accessible. Everyone can do it. And yeah, we have a whole list of survivors inside that you can write to on our website. So there are folks out there who want to receive your mail, even if it's just like, oh, hey, my name is Emily, and I hear that you're looking for pen pals. It's as simple as that, making friends.
I love that. I think both of y'all just spoke to what is at like the essence of organizing or, humanity, which is like our connection to one another and recognizing like everyone is deserving of love and care. And we are, for folks on this workshop, we are going to get a chance to write letters or notes, love notes to folks. And before we do that, I wanted to give a little bit of an introduction to this initiative that HNMR has been working on, which is part of this workshop series, this Love Letters to Movement Leaders initiative. So it started in 2018, and while organizing campaigns with HNMR members, I noticed and our team noticed that Asian Americans were hungry to learn more about our histories of resistance and how we're connected to current movements for liberation. And in this new imagining of these love letters to movement leaders, my colleague Bianca and I asked Asian Americans, including Nate, on this call, to write love letters to someone they consider a leader who has shaped their work. And these letters honor their historical legacies and they also share how we're all interconnected with communities who paved the way for us. And I want to talk a little bit about identities, our identities as being Asian Americans, because again, like I mentioned earlier, it's really important to name who we are and where we come from. So our identities as Asian Americans and the Asian American movement are rooted in the Black liberation and civil rights movements, the Third World Liberation Front, and the fight against imperialism, which we've all kind of talked about earlier as we were describing our work. And many leaders from these movements have shaped us, and we know that separating us from our histories is an intentional strategy that prevents us all from building power together, because white supremacy, state violence, etc., thrives on isolation. And we also recognize that movements are built by many people who dare to imagine new ways of living. And we believe that all people in our communities have the ability to define their problems and imagine their own solutions. So Love Letters to Movement Leaders deepens this relationship to the work of those who came before us and with each other. And I liked sharing that because I think it really speaks to what we're discussing here today during our workshop, which is like our connection to one another, recognizing that anyone can be a leader in their communities despite, anything that has happened to them. And now we're going to get both Nate and Emily to share their own love letters, which they've written. And they're going to read an excerpt from their letters, and they're going to tell us why they chose to honor the folks that they did. So I think, Nate, you're going to go first.
Sure. I'm so nervous. Nia is actually on this video right now. Nia's been messaging me. I see you. I'm like sweating over here. So I wrote this letter to Nia, and one of the excerpts read, I did not know what love as a practice looked like before entering this work. Seeing you fight day in and day out for people behind bars showed me what love looks like in action. You taught me that when you love freedom or a person behind bars, you must believe the greatest outcomes are possible. What we do to get there is always rooted in love. Theories, liberatory praxis, and radical politics are pretty on paper, but it is what we practice with each other that will get us free. Thank you, Nia, for teaching me that. I get like super emotional every time I think about Nia and my entry point into this work. And if you don't know Nia, you have to get to know Nia. Nia is this incredible organizer, incredible human being, is a part of SNP, APSC, CCWP. And I think one of the pivotal points for me was I used to, Nia always tells me the story. Doesn't always, I probably just always bring it up, but says all these times that she's asked for help, people have told her no. She was like, "Oh, can you help me get a resentence? No. Can you help me find my immigration case? No. Can you help me get free? No." And then Nia's response is always, "If you're not gonna help me, I'm gonna do it without you." And Nia is free. Nia got pardoned, and Nia has shown a commitment to other people inside like I've never seen before. And it teaches me that it's not a matter of if we can get someone free, it's just a matter of how.
That was beautiful, Nia. And yes, shout out to Nia, who's on this call. Yeah, we love you, Nia. So I wrote my letter for Kanoa. Kanoa is that's incarcerated member of Survived and Punished California. He is a Black trans man, and he is a real leader in the prison. He has started his own mentorship programs for younger folks that come inside. He is trying to get a podcast off the ground right now that talks about survivors and survivors who have life without parole convictions. So, I've always been really, I've always heard so much about Kanoa and what a leader he is. And yeah, I got to know him a bit through letter writing. And so I'll read a bit of my excerpt today. And Kanoa is a name that Kanoa picked out. It means free man. So, Kanoa, free man, my friend. I'm a little closer to freedom and grace because I met you. You're of integrity, steadfastness, and strength. You're a survivor. You affirm for yourself and others that you are a free man, deeply rooted in grace. You mentor 7 young incarcerated people right now. You garden and encourage them to garden too. You play volleyball together. You write to me every week, and we exchange childhood stories while discussing organizing strategies. One day, you asked me to look into how to start a podcast. You would like to start one for survivors with LWOP sentences. I send out emails to ask who can help and get a few responses. I feel freer and more gracious, even as the world burns outside my window. We are resisting tremendous and awful power. Day after day, the state and its agents displayed their blatant disregard for human life and dignity in the face of soul-shaking, earth-shattering loss. They have sentenced you to death by incarceration, but you do not give up hope, and I do not either. So that was my little excerpt. Also, the fires were happening when I wrote this. That's why I was saying the world was literally burning outside my window. But yeah.
Thank you for sharing, both of you. For folks attending today, we just dropped a link to Kanoa's petition so that they can be free. Please sign and share it widely. Thanks, y'all, for sharing your letters. They make me tear up because they're really tender, and it's really clear that y'all feel a lot of love for your chosen movement leaders. Mia, we love you. I can't believe you're here. One of the tenets, and I mentioned this earlier, of love letters to movement leaders is that we believe anyone can be a movement leader. And today we have the chance to write short love letters or love notes to 2 incarcerated loved ones, Patti Waller and Tien Pham. And Emily and Nate are going to tell us a bit more about Patti and Tien and what we can do to support their fight for freedom. So yeah, take it away, y'all.
You're on
Nate,
mute.
you are muted.
Okay. Because I unmuted, does that mean I'm going first? Yes. I can introduce Patti. I mean, Tien, and I'll let Emily introduce Patti. Is that okay? So Tien is a Vietnamese refugee. Tien was actually part of our Roots class in San Quentin State Prison. He came here in 1996. His family escaped the Vietnam War. And when he got incarcerated at the age of 17, after he got into a fight with a group of teenagers, and was sentenced for attempted murder and sentenced to 28 years in prison. But while inside, he got his college degree. He became a leader in the Roots program. He writes for the San Quentin News. And when he got found suitable, we were getting ready for his release, and then he got transferred over to ICE. So right now he's sitting in ICE, awaiting trial and potentially facing deportation. Governor Gavin Newsom could have intervened and didn't on Tien's behalf. But Tien is an incredible human being. He's a really good friend of mine. It's really painful to know that one of your friends is facing another system. So if y'all could send him some letters and support him through this process, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. So Patricia Waller, she also goes by Patti. So Patti was also transferred to ICE upon her release from prison after 15 years of incarceration. So, like Tien, what that means is they were set to be released and they should be walking out right now, but instead, CDCR, the California Corrections Department, does a direct transfer to ICE. And this happens because of the criminal conviction. And that is used to threaten deportation on these folks who should be free. So it's really egregious. It's completely unnecessary that they were transferred to ICE in any way. It's just not, it's an incredible violence, and it's really tragic that upon getting paroled and released, folks are being transferred to another form of imprisonment instead. Patti is a survivor of abuse. She's a survivor of violence, and like the great overwhelming majority of women in prison, a history of violence does relate to your experience of being incarcerated. In fact, it's a straight pipeline. We call it the abuse to prison pipeline. Patti was unfortunately one of the folks that has to survive that kind of violence. I'm going to read a little bit of what Patti shared with us. And, okay, one second. Being incarcerated takes a lot away from you, especially your mental health. You experience sadness and depression from the loss of your family, children, all the birthdays, holidays, graduation. My parents and family go through the same thing. The sadness and self-blame never fully go away. My father is 82 years old and in poor health. If I'm deported, he would never see me again. The thought of being picked up by ICE after finally winning my freedom fills me with great anxiety. And this was shared with us before she was transferred. But yeah, so I think I wanted to share just a bit about what Patty's going through in this moment, and to have empathy for the terrible violence that she's experiencing. So I think that this can be a really great opportunity to show her some love, and let her know that she's not alone, and that we have heard her story and we support her.
Thanks for sharing, y'all. It is extremely fucked up, like these situations. And again, so grateful that y'all can join us today and share their stories directly with folks who can write letters to them, and support their campaign for freedom and to reunite with their families. Now we're going to get a chance to write love notes to Patti and Tien. And APSC and Survived and Punished will share the letters directly with them. So Jeannie, I think you asked what is Tien's address, but you won't need to worry because we'll be sending them together. So Shumi is going to drop links to some worksheets that you may have received in an email, but again, we'll drop it in the chat so you have all the materials necessary for the writing activity. You're welcome to write directly in those worksheets, or if you prefer to have a paper and pen, you're also welcome to get that out. So in your love notes, you can express your solidarity and write a message of encouragement, affirmation, and love, as both Patti and Tien are fighting for their freedom from deportation and imprisonment. So remember that these letters will be opened and inspected by prison guards, so please do not write messages that could get someone in trouble, such as burn down prisons or anything like that. Instead, you may want to introduce yourself, share how you were impacted by their story. Why are you writing to them today? Think about if there are any words of solidarity and support you want to offer, and to thank them for being a movement leader. We will be sending the love notes to Patti and Tien. So we are asking y'all to take a photo or a screenshot of what you wrote and then to email it to us at info@18mr.org with the subject line love notes, and don't forget to include your name. Please indicate if you're comfortable in the email, if we can share your love note publicly, because if so, we'll share it on the community section of our love letter site, which we've been dropping in the chat, and we will again. Also, it would be really helpful if you rename your photo or screenshot to indicate who you wrote your love note to, so that just like facilitates the process of sending them to Patti and Tien. It is 1:50 now, so I think we can give y'all about 15 to 20 minutes to write your love notes. And again, you're welcome to do that on paper and pen or with the worksheets. It's 1:50, so let's come back at 2:05. I think what we'll do is all the speakers will have our videos off so that y'all have some quiet writing time to work on these. And then when time is up, we'll ping y'all in the chat. We'll come back on, and then we're gonna do a Q&A if there are questions, and then we'll wrap up. So I think we can do that. Yeah, so we'll come back at 2:05 to start chatting again.
and I took 2 months off work to travel to every university of California and almost every CSU to talk about get there is always rooted in love. It is this incredible
Hi, friends. We're going to come back now. Emily, if you're on your computer, you can also join us on screen. I know that probably wasn't enough time for everyone to finish their love notes, so I'm just going to reiterate that you don't have to turn them in right now, but in order for us to get them to Patti and Tien, we would appreciate if y'all would take a photo or a screenshot of your love note and send that to info@hnmr.org. Those instructions are on the worksheets and also in the chat. I see that Emily has a request that you can also email the actual text so that they can print and compile for Patti and Tien as well. And after this workshop, we can also follow up with y'all with an email reminder with instructions about how you can submit those to us. Great. Okay. Right now, we're going to move on to our Q&A section and just kind of close out our conversation and workshop today. If you do have questions for us, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen. We're going to do Q&A now. Emily, this question is for you. You mentioned that due to the USPS backlog, we could also use JPay and Connect Network for pen pals. Can you speak more to this process? You are muted.
Sorry about that. So JPay and Connect Network are it's like an emailing system basically, but for incarcerated people and folks who are trying to get in touch with them. And it's they're terrible companies. They profit off the prison system and blah blah blah. And it's still important. Like we still have to talk to our folks inside. So it is just an alternative way of writing letters to your person, your pen pal. And I'm going to drop the link for JPay right now in the chat. If you go to the website, it will say like sign up and start today. And then first find your inmate. And there, what you would have to do is figure out the inmate ID number of the person you're trying to write. You'll actually need that information for snail mail as well. So for Kanoa specifically, because I saw that someone asked how to write to Kanoa, I'm going to drop this in the chat. So Kanoa, that's like the physical mail address you would use, and then the number in the parentheses, this W84168 number, that is the inmate ID number that you plug into JPay, and then you can sign up an account. You pay like electronic stamps, basically, and you can email your folks. It's not a great system, like messages will get lost all the time. And also it's less secure than snail mail because with JPay, they keep all that. They keep all the content of your letter. So if you're discussing things that are sensitive, like it just has different kinds of ramifications. Whereas with snail mail, you could discuss certain things and, they can toss the letter or they can decide what to do with all of that. So those are some of the differences. But right now, most prisons have like a huge backlog of mail. Like they're not even taking mail right now. So it's extremely hard to get in touch through snail mail at the moment. If you are interested in starting a letter writing practice, I would advise that during COVID, it might be better to use to rely on JPay, or Connect Network, which is a other system that you may use. So yeah, those are a little, that's like a very quick brief on what JPay is. But yeah, just something to keep in mind. I think with physical letters right now, it takes like, I got a letter that was sent like 6 months ago or something. So that's not great for developing a pen pal relationship. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Emily. Just to reply to Kenza from the Q&A, you asked if you can email the text alone or do you want to screenshot our photo? We're suggesting both so that they can get the actual letter that you wrote and also the text, just so that folks have options. And again, we can follow up with an email after the workshop with like explicit instructions if you haven't completed your love note yet. I have a question for Nate, actually, which is not asked by the audience, but that's okay. I can also ask questions. I would love to hear more about that 2-month period that you took off from APSC to do visits to universities. I would just love to hear like a little bit more about that and like what your conversations were like talking to folks, and like if that kind of organizing is still something that y'all are doing at APSC.
Yeah, so fun fact, I was a volunteer for APSC for a very long time before I came on as staff. I was actually working at the University of California, Berkeley, while I was volunteering, and I felt like it was necessary to take some time off to organize. So when I was going to college campuses, I mean, I was doing it super old school. I mean, I don't think we're as video savvy as we are now, just given COVID wasn't around back when I was doing these campaigns. And the conversations I was having was, I was running this campaign for this guy who's also an APSC staff now, named Bori PJ I. And it was the Bring PJ Home campaign, and that shifted to Keep PJ Home campaign. And when I launched it, it was a little bit, I wouldn't even say difficult. It felt automatic, right? Like before I started, I didn't have a blueprint of what were people saying or what was the narrative around how do you fight for someone with a murder conviction, right? In the undocumented movement, in the Dreamer movement, I couldn't find a lot of things about how people were changing the conversation or shifting the conversation to fight for the freedom of people who have real serious convictions. So when I was talking to PJ, and PJ was sharing this story about how he came here as a child, how he resettled in Stockton, and at the elementary school that he attended, there was this mass shooting by this guy named Patrick Purdy, resulted in a number of deaths of elementary school kids that were predominantly Southeast Asian refugees. And he witnessed that. He lost a cousin in that shooting. And he talks about how since that point, he felt unsafe. And when you feel unsafe, I think we do a lot of wild things to try to feel safe, right? And I don't even consider what he did like something wild. Like, he joined a gang and started to get into that lifestyle. But I think if we understand the root of violence, like the root of structural violence, that moves people to commit crime, we can develop more empathy. And that's what I was sharing with students, right? Like, what happens when the US comes into your country, bombs your country, resettles you into some of the most poorest neighborhoods as a result of the civil rights movement, right? Like after the civil rights movement, the US was like, we're just going to defund all these cities that are predominantly Black, resettle refugees in there, and then ask them to survive, right? And students were really sympathetic to that, and a lot of students felt that, and a lot of students can hear that. And I gained a lot more support than I anticipated. I think we had like 40,000 pieces of material sent into the governor's office in support of PJ's release and PJ's stay. It was incredible. It was an incredible moment for me.
Wow, it's really, this work is really tough and difficult, and it's amazing to hear like wins. Those are really important for us to like replenish ourselves and nourish ourselves in this fight. So I'm really glad that was the outcome. We have some more questions. I think we can combine this in actually. Clarissa asked, do you have any recommendations on how to find and choose who to write to inside? And then Turner asked, who are other organizations that can connect us to incarcerated people through letter writing? So if either of y'all want to take a stab at that.
Do you want to start, Nate, or should I go?
We might have the same answers.
Yeah, I think so.
Black and Pink. I was gonna say Blackpink, not Blackpink. They're the K-pop group. Black and Pink is an organization that has kind of a letter writing system. I think they went on this huge research project to find out who are the impacted people inside. And they have a system where you can link up with a pen pal, and they have a database on their website.
Yeah, and they work specifically with trans and queer incarcerated people. That's their focus. So all the folks that you'd be writing inside are trans or queer. And they have chapters across the country. So you can kind of figure out like, oh, is there a local chapter? And if not, I'm sure their existing affiliates would be able to set you up with someone anyways. So Black and Pink is really great. APSC also has a list probably, right?
Yeah, so we do have a list of people we write. We are in a very particular moment in history with COVID and fires. So California has gone this huge release. So we're in the process of revamping our database on who's still inside, who's out, who's in ICE, right? But we do have people that people can write.
Yeah, for Survived and Punished, we have a list of incarcerated survivors of domestic or sexual violence. And you can find that list here. It's about in the middle of the page. And it's organized by like the different locations. The New York one has a list of like 60 people. And I think that I know it can be hard to pick like who to write to because they're just names on a page, right? But I think I would advise writing to like maybe 2 or 3 people. And I think it's okay to just select random names off a list. And just see if that relationship takes form or not. And if that's not someone that you're connecting with as much, you can kind of write to other people then. But yeah, it's kind of like it's estranging because you're writing to people you've never seen before and don't really know much about. But I think kind of like that awkwardness of like not knowing who this person is part of the practice. So yeah, I think it's good to just pick names off a list, and there are lists available, and just see where that relationship goes. And yeah, I do want to mention also actually, I think I lost my thought. Sorry about that.
Yeah. And I do want to add, there's organizations all over every state with people, with a list and database of people inside to write. And to Emily's point, my starting point was political prisoners. Like I wrote to Mumia Jamal. And even from there, Mumia was like, write this person, write this person, write this person. So it almost becomes like this snowball effect, right? Like when I wrote to PJ, when I write to Nia, right? Friends of Nia's or friends of PJ's will be like, oh, who you write to? Oh, I want to write them. And then they'll write me. And I think I write a ton of people every year. And then the thing about letter writing, which I think gets understated as well, is letter writing is a discipline, right? So I start every morning off writing a letter to someone, and it's become a practice. And if you're familiar with Yuri Kochiyama, like there's this really great podcast that talks about Yuri called "You Don't Say No to Yuri." I think it's on AAWW's podcast has that. That's where it's held, and it talks about how Yuri, when Yuri was sick and couldn't write, that's when Yuri didn't feel like themselves, right? Like because it's been so ingrained in such a practice, right? And writing is a discipline, and if you're gonna do this, it is a commitment to people inside.
Thanks for sharing that, y'all. As a follow-up to like letter writing as a discipline and as a practice, do y'all have any other like words of advice to people who may be letter writing for the first time? Emily, I thought it was really helpful when you said like it's okay to choose random people off a list and to see if the relationship develops. Is there anything else that y'all want to share about that?
So I think Laura is going to point to these resources later, but there are resources available that people have developed so that, just best practices and tips on how to letter write. And I would say the link that just got posted, it's a really helpful resource. You can read through it and think through like different boundaries that you need to set and how to practice this relationship ethically. So I would definitely give that a thorough read, that entire letter writing action page with the addresses. Sorry, what was the question? I have pandemic brain right now.
Oh, no worries. If there were any other like takeaways or best practices around letter writing, maybe aside from these tips, but if it's all like encapsulated there, like don't feel free to like say that as well.
Yeah, I will say like sometimes I think what stops people from letter writing incarcerated people is the fear of like intensity and like the tragedy that is lurking, or not even lurking, it's just like front and center. And that can feel pretty scary to enter into a relationship with someone who is going through a lot, like just a lot. And I think I would kind of what helped me was just practicing and finding out that, folks inside are not just depressed and like, it's not like this empty hole of like nothingness. Like they have full lives. Folks, they have stories to tell you. And it's not always going to be like, oh, like I suffered this really terrible, traumatic thing and it was awful. And, it's not going to be like that. I think most of the time folks actually just want to chat. And, I'm going to send like kimchi recipes, for example, to Kanoa this weekend because, he asked for them. And, that's like the kind of just conversations that you can have, and it doesn't have to be this like super intense like yeah, it just doesn't have to be a super intense like we're talking about trauma all the time and prisons and violence. Like, it's really more like sending mail to your mom, for example. Like, yeah, it's simple. So I think hopefully that takes a little bit of edge off in terms of like people's fears. And I think they're very legitimate fears too, around starting a relationship like that. So, yeah.
Ditto everything Emily said.
Did you want to add anything else, Nate?
I think Emily covered it pretty well. My favorite part about letter writing is, sometimes I'll write people who are like dog trainers and they send me pictures of the dogs that they're training. It's probably one of my favorite things. I had a debate over Adele over a letter once. Right, like which one of Adele's songs are the better one. So just to alleviate, to Emily's point, not everything is doom and gloom. This work, right? Relationships are about everything, right? It's yeah.
What were the takes on the Adele song?
They said "Hello" is the best one. I had to really brush up on Adele songs to really engage in this letter writing. Yeah, Adele. I don't have any songs that are my favorite. That's what I said.
That's fair. That's fair. You don't have to have a take.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all. I think we're going to wrap up. Before we do, there's one last question, which is like, when is the last day to submit our letters? I don't know. Maybe we can set like a 1 week window. So today is Saturday. Y'all will have time to submit. We will again send a follow-up email reminding y'all of that deadline. And then once a week rolls around, we're gonna submit, H&MR will submit all the letters to APSC and Survived and Punished, and then they'll be sending it along to Patti and Tien. So let's say 1 week, just so we know that there's kind of a backlog, and I don't want Patti and Tien to wait too long to get their letters. Okay, we're gonna close out. So Shumi's gonna drop links to all the resources that we've mentioned throughout this workshop. Just a reminder that this is recorded, so everyone is welcome to come back and review. Emily said short letters are welcome. You do not need to write an essay. That is okay. And I don't want y'all to forget to submit them, so the sooner the better. We do have some calls to action from all the organizations. H&MR is currently working on a fundraiser to support Black-led organizations. We are going to bump that here. And I think the round ends on Monday. So if you'd like to participate or support, please do so. APSC is working right now to stop ICE transfers and also to support firefighter and refugee Khao Se Lee. That link is going to be dropped, so please check that out. Survived and Punished is working to free Kanoa. We dropped that link earlier. We're going to drop that again. Please sign and circulate. And support all of these calls to action, actually. And lastly, we would love for y'all to fill out this feedback form. It's really important for us to make sure that we met your access needs, that y'all got what you expected to get out of this workshop. It really helps us to inform other offerings in the future. So please, please, please fill it out. It'll not take very long at all. It's very brief. And again, if you've enjoyed this workshop today, please donate. Again, all donations will go towards the abolitionist organizing of Survived and Punished, Asian Prisoner Support Committee, and H&MR. Funds will also pay ASL interpreters and live captioning. Yeah, any amount is very appreciated. And that takes us to time. Emily or Nate, would you like to say anything to close us out? You don't have to, it is optional.
Just thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday. I know that we all have tons of Zoom meetings these days, so really appreciate folks showing up. It really means a lot to, yeah, it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending. Remind everyone to rest up. The movement is long. The struggle for freedom is long. Rest up. Support each other, write each other, care for each other.